I know the seminar was put together on a bit of short notice. That's because we had such a wonderful opportunity to bring my friend Ellena down from Solomon Islands this week, and we pounced on it. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Ellena Kelly. She is a disability advocate from Solomon Islands, who's done a lot of work on the disability space, including recently as an observer in the 2024 Solomon Islands elections. Now here at the ANU, we do a lot of work on elections, and one area that we're particularly cognizant that we don't do enough on is the space of disability inclusion, and how people with disability engage in elections as voters, as candidates, as campaign workers, and also as observers. So I'm really happy to introduce Ellena, who will be speaking about her personal experience as an observer, with also some broad reflections on the role of disability inclusion in Solomon Islands politics and elections. So I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, first of all, I apologize if I don't speak well English because it's my second language and I'm struggling. And yeah, as Karen said, my name is Ellena. I work with people in Solomon Island, and we advocate so much for disability inclusion in Solomon Island. I am a disability inclusion officer. I work with different types of people in Solomon Island, trying to empower them mostly economically and trying to support them being independent. So that's what I did so much. So we will talk about disability inclusion in Solomon Island, especially on the election side. So for the context, you guys already know that this is what the report you have done. I think 70% of women have lived with disability. And we just ratified our convention on the right of people with disability in 2023. It was signed in 2008, and it takes us a long period of time to ratify that. Yeah, and we have been working with different organizations, different NGOs, different funders to try and make Solomon Island an inclusive environment for all. So yeah. Now, before I go on further, I'll talk about the disability models that we have. So in the Solomon Island, we didn't see inclusion as something that should be prioritized. I think because of the cultures and because of we didn't understand what is disability and that. So we always treat disability as a medical model. We say that disability needs support for health. They are dependable, they need cures. So that is the fact that brings a lot of setbacks for people with disability in the Solomon Island, and we don't see the right of people with disability. I think there's a lot of people do not understand what the Constitution is, and they don't understand how to support different type of people in the Solomon Islands. So it gives a lot of barriers for people with disability, especially. So I've been working with the election as an observer. So I've been doing observing in 2 elections, and I've seen a lot of barriers that people with disability have to come across. And most of the barriers comes from because we don't have the right human right models that sees everybody have the right and everything. We focus most on the charity model and the medical model, where we see people as when you have sympathy for people, you support them, but you don't give them the needs they want. You don't give them opportunity for them to show what's their ability and what they can do. But we just give them something because we feel sympathy for them. So that is why there's a lot of barrier for people with disability, especially during the election. So in the 2024 election, I'll say that it's kind of one step to inclusion, because we have done a lot in the past trying to make it more accessible and inclusive for people with disability. But previously, to my experience, it is more like so difficult for us. my own experience, I didn't register when I was like 18 because it's not accessible for me. I cannot go in line with everybody else. The environment is not accessible. I do not understand what's going on. And there's no information. There is no support for people with disabilities. So I was not registered and being part of the election. So I stayed until the recent one. I just got registered. And this gives us a more side on what is inclusion. People don't understand what is inclusion, and they don't know how to support people with disability during, after, or in the process of election. So most of the people that have left out. Despite we say we in a democratic world, like we support democracies in Solomon Islands, but we don't see, like we don't understand what's democracy and that with other people. So it's quite difficult for us in the Solomon Islands to understand that. I think for me, my experience, most people do not aware of like what is democracy as it is and how it impacts people's life. So that is it gives a lot of challenge for everybody else. And I have seen a lot of information from you, from the research you have done, and it gives us information to our leaders, to our people working in the sectors to really see what is a disability. But when you go down to rural areas, there's where a lot of things happening, a lot of discrimination, a lot of setbacks. That's where people do not understand that what's going on. But when you go up to the leadership role, you go up to the level that you can see that they understand it, but they don't know how to do it. Like they don't know how to approach people with disability during elections or after election. So it's been a challenging thing for us to do that. And I've been in the election, so last year, observing, and I've seen that we have a lot of barriers still yet to be seen. So people were trained to take care of the election or run the election, but they don't train to approach people. So as I say, they train to run the election, do things and everything. But when there's a person with disability coming in, they know that these people can be prioritized. So you're prioritizing that person, but you don't know what need they want. You just prioritize them to get voted, to being part of the election, but you don't know their need. So that's a big gap we have. I'm saving and I see that the people coming in, so they, okay, you can be in the first line, you can go and vote, but they don't know how can I speak with that person? How can I know that this person needs is this? So one example is where I observe they provide ramp, they provide assistance, but the names of the voters was up there. So that person on wheelchair comes in and doesn't know how to like list that place and see his name. So he waited for somebody to like go and do that for him. And for us in the Solomon Island, when you depend much, some people, you depend to your family so much they can cause discrimination and they can even left you at home because they are tired. So when somebody with disability trying to access their right and then there's discrimination coming in, it's like so difficult for people with disability. So yeah, and have seen a lot of that. But because we have the support from different organizations, different funders, and you guys writing every research and everything, we are one step from that. From the past experience, like there's a lot of setbacks and other things, but now we have they are prioritizing disability. But the thing is, we want to see we fully participating and they know our need and we can support each other because as I said, we can be independent, and that independence depends on you people to set this value free so that we can be independent. But yeah, there's a lot of things happening during the election. I observed, and one recommendation I would put is like people with disabilities should not be participating, but they should participate and actually do something. Like if I told you that I want this, I can see that you make the change. So I think what happens a lot is they just put people with disability in the room and it's okay, we're included. We're including our people with disability, but they're not participating. Actually, just sit there and just stare. And then people go and say, okay, we have disability people in the room, but that person just sit there. So I think that's what happens in the Solomon Island. We say the inclusion by seeing a person with disability around but we don't actually meet the need. So yeah, that's that. Okay, I just told Karen to pull up this. I just want to, this is from your reshades, but if you see on the disability, there are a few numbers of people saying yes, and this is your reshades. I mean, I think this one shows that we don't know what is disability, because a few people say yes, but there are a lot of different type of impairment, I say. So when the census going around, they only see the physical disability. If my disability is visible, you know that I have disability. But if not, it's not visible, then you cannot know that I have a disability or not. So disability can be in any form. So sometimes people don't, they thought that they have, as I say, it's in a medical model. They thought they are sick because that's what people told them. They sick, they need to be cured. So when you come, the census comes around the community and say, do you have disabilities? No, I'm sick. So that is why the number is so low, because most people were treated like they are sick and they need cured. So most of the disability, you cannot count them or you cannot list them in the data they left out um, because of how we see people with disability. I'll give an example. So I've been working in a community trying to do awareness, and there's a one approaching who said, you know, this guy, but they has sugar, so they cut off his leg, but he's not disabled. And I was like, what? Yeah, because he has two legs previously, but because of that, so they cut off his leg. We didn't treat him as disability. No, disability can happen at any time in your life. Like, it can be a long-term occurred or it happens right now. So yeah, he has a disability and he's not sick. That is part of where we are. So sometimes in life you can occur like in a short term or long term, but it's a disability, and he can be treated or cured, but he's sick, but it's a disability. So that is why people do not understand what is disability disorder and to make it more inclusion. And yeah, so as I've said earlier, people, you see, this is what we have in every election. We have the voting, the pictures everywhere in town. And you can see that it's not inclusive for us because we need brailles, we need sign language interpreters, and most of our disabilities are illiterate because we don't access to education. There's a lot of environmental inaccessibility. So when these things comes up, it gives us like a less opportunity to take part in these things because I may recognize the picture, but I don't know how to read it. I may watch this and like the writing is too small. So how if a person with low vision, I cannot understand this, and because I'm illiterate, I don't know what to do. So this information is so hard for a person with disability, especially in the Solomon Island. Um, And then most of our buildings, most of the site in Solomon Island is not accessible. So for a person with disabilities to fully participate in elections, I could say it's like 1%. Yeah, because it's really difficult. I have never seen a person with disability actually working in the election committee or the electoral group because I think because the illustrate or because they don't see the disability need is important to them, but it's kind of challenging. I always say that if you want to know somebody need, you have to be in the Zoom. So if you want to know my need, you have to get me there and I'll show you what happens. Like this is what I do, this is what good for me. So in the election that's going on, most we just place disability in the room and then we say we include it. And then when it comes out, the result is not working good because we just not see and put into action what is really needed for a person with disability. So I think for the last election, it's the first election that is a bit inclusive, where we have some venues out at the lowest level of the house. We recognize the need to prioritize people with disability, the older people, the pregnant mothers, and compared to the past, we didn't have that, and most of the disability were left out just because they don't access those places. So I think, yeah, it's one step to inclusion for yeah. And yeah, So I'll talk about a lot about that, about the observation. I've observed the election that's going on, and I've seen that we need a lot of changes, but these changes happens if we take one step at a time. Because most of the time people say disability is very expensive because you need a lot of fueling, you need a lot of things to do to make it accessible to people with disability. But if we take things one at a time, it will work. So I think my personal experience about election is the inaccessibility. The information that was stated and given to people about election is not quite accessible. Because as I've said, most of our disability people are illiterate. Um, and we don't know how to support people with disability because we don't understand their needs. So we just prioritize them to be in the line first, to go and vote first, but we don't see their need. So sometimes it's kind of frustrating. I've experienced during the post-election as a blind person, and he wants to go to vote. So they try to assist him, but and then they break the rule of the election because it's your privacy and it's secrecy. But then all of the workers coming in and like trying to support him to vote, but that's not working because that's not the rule. And so they happen to break it without knowing because they're trying to support that person with disability. So sometimes people tend to go beyond the secrecy of the election because they try to support a person with disability. So I think knowing the need of a person with disability is great because you cannot spoil the secrecy of the voting. You know their need and they can do it alone. So that's one thing I've seen. And yeah, lack of information about disability. Um, we are doing awareness. We work with IFS. We work with different NGOs. We work with the UNDP. Trying to make election more inclusive for people with disability. But I think the barrier there is we don't put ourselves in that. We just work doing that because of the purpose walking. We don't see the need of like prioritizing. This is what we should do and it should be happening. But we go there to do the work because it is what we want to do. We just go and work on the election. But if we put that into something that should be done and should be taken into action, I think there'll be a lot of inclusion for people with disability. Yeah. So I have said most of the time when we support disability, we lost the secrecy of in election because we're struggling to support them without knowing their need, and then we break the rules. So most of the workers of the election work and just prioritizing a disability without knowing what to do and how to support people with disability. So as you can see here, when somebody with disability comes in, they saw you and then, okay, you can go in front. And then they put you in there, you vote, and then when you're done, you're just done, or you didn't do anything. So sometimes most of the disability people got left out and got discriminated. And one of the biggest barrier is after the voting, people didn't know what's disability. When somebody's up there, you those people with disabilities that cast their ballot, um, putting you up there to do something to change the system they just left out. So there's no changes. This is continue to happen where they're struggling to come to the place for voting and they cast their ballot and they do things, but when this change is happening, they forget about the people with disability in the community, especially in the rural areas. And I think one of the things is the development, the rural development fund. The government usually give it to people in the so that is more inaccessible for people with disability too. Because if you want to get that fund, you have to fill up information, paperwork. You have to go to the venue, you have to travel everywhere to get information you want, and then you fill out the paper. And when you finish that, you hand it over for them to give you whatever you want. But for people with disabilities, it's kind of difficult because of the impairment, the bodies, the environmental barriers, and everything. So for us to go and fill out the paper and going everywhere and coming and then setting that, it's so challenging. So like, it's not most of the time, but actually on every election, people with disability left out on that. You can see that the development fund goes down to the rural area and goes to people without disability. And they are supporting them to have businesses or whatever that the government give to the people, it's for people without disability. And the people with disability, the older people, they left out because they don't go through the process. So everybody have to go through that process. And because there's a lot of barrier, people with disability could not access that. So yeah, that's about that. Now, political participation. In the Solomon Islands, you hardly see women in the election. You can find like one or yeah. And if you think of a person with disability, that is like twice challenge for them to be in any seat in the parliament. So I think for political participation for person with disability, it's very low because we are culturally orientated. We say that men are the leaders and we always go for men. And then when women are struggling, sometimes few women could like run for election. But if a woman with disability goes in, they'll be like, oh, you sick. If we are supporting you, and how can you support us? Because you have a disability. And we are there supporting you the whole time. And if you want to be our leader, how can you support us? So it's kind of difficult for a person with disability to participate in a political event. Also, even going out just doing campaigns and other stuff, they don't. Will always left out. I think that happens because people don't know disability. And the important thing is people should train about disability. They should understand how to use disability. So yeah, in the Solomon Island, you hardly see people with disability participating in any election. Only thing that we participate is in observe. So you cannot see them work on any polling station as registration officer and other offices. No, we just participate through observing. So we are there just sitting and doing nothing, just observing, and then give a report. Sometimes our report didn't work out. So it's kind of challenging for us to say our voice and giving people the information that this is what is accessible for everybody. And if we say we are living in a democratic world where everyone has a right and we should not be left out, then why are we left out? Because we have the right. But yeah, I think that's about participation in election. Political parties. Political parties, that is very difficult for us too, because everybody don't know which party they in unless you like you into politics. So if you're not into politics, you will not know what is the political party, am I in which political party. So I think a lot of people in the Solomon Island don't know what is political party, and they don't even in political party. So we have these political parties, and if you see the political parties, there are number of political people in this party is very low, and you can see the area of people in these parties because they don't know what is the political party and what it's about. And also, if those people don't know about that, they haven't access information. They know what's going on. And if you think of a disability people who doesn't access any information, have a lot of barrier, they really don't understand what's going on, and they're like we're left out so much. So for them to be in a political party, it's I think for me it's so challenging and it's kind of hard unless they're in a group where people see them and they are participating. So in our office there are a few number of people in a political party, maybe three, yeah, I think it's that. So I asked her, why did you like go in a political party? Say because people include me. I was included in the group. So why do you include? Because they prioritize disability, so they pick me out of everyone to just go out and support our information sharing, the awareness they have. So that's when I'm in a political party, and you understand what's going on. It's like no, but I'm in a group. Okay, that's great. So yeah, for disability people in the Solomon Island, I've said a few times it's kind of difficult because of all the barriers we have. I think Solomon Island is not built for disability because we are within the culture where women, you should stay at home and do this, and when you have disability, you are sick and you're dependable and you cannot do anything. You are just there to sit and everybody can support you or discriminate you, whatever, but that's how it works. um, and yeah, but through that, we have a lot of support from different NGOs, different organizations, and different research that you guys have shared helps people in the important spaces to see and know that these people are very important to be part of the group and giving us the opportunity to share the view of people with disability and able to work with them. And we are in the 2024 election, we are able to one step out of in push not accessible to just a little bit accessible to the environment maybe or to prioritizing people with disability. So it's a great start. Um, so disability inclusion measure in politics. I think if we measure disability inclusion by the environment, if your environment is accessible, then that's inclusion. If the information with the election going out is we have brain information, we have information that short-sighted people can see, and that's how we measure that it is inclusion. Also, the participation of people with disability in election, maybe they can run as a candidate or just working in the electoral office. I think that could be a measure that we say we going to inclusion because whenever they're there, they can talk about what is disability and people can really understand what is disability and try to support them. But if there is no disability people in these areas, people will just ignore them because they are not fighting for their rights. And people that does not feel how people with disability feel and go through those challenges. So they were like, okay, this is what disability is, and then but if someone you go through that and you know how it feels, you will fight for it and you're like, this is happening, I need to change the situation. So yeah, to measure disability inclusion in politics, it is through the participation of people with disability in any forms of political issues. Maybe they can run for a candidate, maybe they can work in the political areas so that they can share the need and support people with disability through that. Okay, so this is disability support development. I thought, could you please put development over there? And because I see disability inclusion as development. Because if you build a ramp, example, if you build a ramp on a way, the disability people can walk through the ramp. An old person can walk, a wheelchair person can walk through any other person can walk through the ramp. So everybody's like accessing that way. But if you build a stairway, only those with a disability can walk up there. The one with wheelchair cannot go there because it's like you have to go up. So when you build something that is accessible and it's good, it kind of helps to development. Yeah? You're building a lot of space, a lot of avenue where everyone access it, and you're developing your country. But when you build something that is like for somebody only, and then there's a lot of differences, a lot of barriers, that is not development, but still people left out, and they need support. And we're fighting, and that is when we're trying, okay, we'll build another one, and we'll build another, and then we spend a lot of money trying to make it accessible. But if we did something that is for disability people, everybody can access it, and it helps to build do development and less spending of money and more expensive. So that's why I said disability is development. So when you prioritize building things that accessible to people with disability, everybody can access, and everybody can access their right, act their right, and do whatever they can support them in every way they can. And if we don't do that, then when we find out we're struggling again, and then we spend a lot of money, we should do that earlier, but we don't, and we don't see that. And when we happen to find out, we're doing a lot of taking a lot of time going by against trying to review something that could access for everybody. So yeah, that is why I said disability support or inclusion is developed. I think that's from me. Anything question or whatever, or anything, please just ask me. Or if you don't understand what I'm trying to say, please just yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ellena. We'll open it up to questions from the room and online. I've got the chat box up, so if you do want to ask a question online, please just indicate that in the chat. Anyone in the room want to start us off? Yeah.
Thank you. That was a really interesting presentation. I was pretty interested in some of the attitudes that you talked about in terms of people's ideas about people with disabilities, voting in election, and the cultural ideas. So perhaps you could talk about that a little bit more. And also, I was wondering if, like, if there's differences between in rural areas or different, even sort of islands, for example, have different ideas related to their culture.
Yeah. So I'll just give an experience. Like we don't know how to call people. We use names. We only use name calling it. So if I walk past, like, it's a pidgin word, like if you have public. So if I walk past in public, they don't call my name, but they don't know that that is a discriminating word. So they just go public and they don't call my name. So to them, it's like they are trying to refer to me. But to me, it's discriminating because, like, my name is over there. You can call me, and they will ask me my name. So yeah, people don't understand that. And sometimes, when there's a person with disability coming in the room, they're like, "Oh man, that is how can we support him?" Because they don't know how to support people with disability. Just because they don't know how to support people with disability, they make an attitudinal barrier or things that harm people with disability. But if they know that, they can support them. So when they saw a person with disability walking in, they said, "This is a burden," because we don't know how to support that person. And when they say, "Oh man, I cannot support them," so the attitude you give, these people see that, and it's like, okay, these people don't want me in that room. I have to go. So yeah, most of the time people with disability are out because of the actions people and attitude that people give to them. And in the community, this is like it is very challenging because people do not understand what is disability. So they just call their names, whatever name they like. Sometimes it's at home, family members do that. They thought they're referring to their child as that, but it's discriminating. So there's a person in the room who's up deaf. So people in Solomon, when they approach people with deaf, they call them down. So there's a dumb person coming by, and that happens a lot. And for the deaf who have gone through awareness and know their rights and that, they always feel hated. They always feel like we're not good enough because people putting them down, and they know that they're not down. So this happens a lot in the Solomon Islands, and especially in the rural community, people do not know what is disability and what is the right. So it's people have to support them to be independent. So yeah, it's kind of very challenging.
Thanks, Elena. We've got a question online about the, I guess, the importance of education for people with disabilities and access to education.
Okay, thank you. So I think education is very important. Since unless you're educated, you have a good job. And if you're not educated, you will struggle to find a job to survive. So if you visited Solomon Island, you can see how it looks. Our universities, our primary schools, secondary schools does not have any single ramp, and every class is like upstairs. So you have to like walk up the stairs, and so I think few number of people with disability got educated, and I think mostly those with short-sighted got educated in the mainstream education, and most of the students go to Red Cross, which is for deaf. Only but because there's no education system for disability people, so everybody goes to that. Despite you're good, you have only physical disability and you can learn like any other one. you won't have to go there because there's no accessibility in education for people with disability. So I went to the University of Solomon Island. I studied there. I'm struggling a lot because I have my classes upstairs, every single class. So I have to like climb up and down the stairs, and it's so difficult for me to go up. Sometimes I miss classes, and people don't see the importance. Like, why did you miss class today? But they don't see that there's a barrier that's stopping me from going up. So in the education system of Solomon Island, we don't have a lot of students, I could say. There are few of us not even reaching 100 going in mainstream education in a year. So if at senior things in another university, we only have 130% going to that university, and then no one else. Most of our students go to the training center, so they just don't learn how to dye clothes. They just don't learn how to do things. But to go in a formal education, we don't have that because of the environmental barriers that we have in the Solomon. So I think, yeah, and it brings a lot of exclusion for people with disability. That's where people don't understand what is disability because we don't prioritize and see the need of person with disability. We thought that we are good and everything is okay, but there are people left out on what we are doing. So yeah, that's that. Thank you.
Well, actually, and your the presentation struck a chord. It's not aside from my video. But I was interested too. I'm not familiar with Solomon's politics, and if there's ever been a person with disabilities elected into parliament. I know in Vanuatu we had one in a wheelchair, and he became like a chair of a parliamentary committee. Unfortunately, he passed away. But I wondered that he became an important role model to say that there is no barrier to getting that level into parliament. So I just wondered if there were similar role models or sources of inspiration in the system that you have in Solomon.
I think for the election, not even running for election or just working in a political group. No, we don't have that. We have other people with disability on different so we have like the lawyers, but they're struggling. Most of our educated people with disability didn't work because the environment is not accessible to them. People don't know how to enforce them. So we have one just graduated and he's struggling to find a job, and he's like staying at home all the time, but he's a graduate lawyer and he does not work because the environment is not accessible to him. And we have the other one also. He's working with the public sector, but because they don't know also how to support him, he's not working now. He's just staying at home, supporting his wife in the office. But yeah, that's how we did not include people with disability because we didn't recognize their needs. So I think we don't have people. You guys did it, but in the Solomon we don't. Yeah, it's very difficult. A lot of barriers. Okay. Yeah. Oh, there's two. Okay, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Trevor. I'm also from Solomon, and thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And bringing to front with our discussion there the issues of elections and disability. And I think to answer Anne's question on if there's ever a disabled person running for election, I think the issue of Solomon there is none, but we do have issues of those going in becoming disabled while in parliament. So I don't think it's a good example for but I think that's a different issue. But coming back to your discussion, I'm happy that we've actually ratified the convention. So that will actually set up a platform for us to actually pursue a lot of the issues in the country. As you rightly mentioned, in 2008, we signed the document, and it was a lot of discussion around it. Politics was one of it, finance was one of it, in bringing it forward. And now we have it, and I do hope that things will go forward. Now, coming towards election, I'm happy that you mentioned something along the lines of privacy during the electoral process. Now, the Disability Act is actually, the Election Act covers disability in a very minute chapter within the Act, only on the process of elections on the day. It does not cover issues around how do we cater for disability representations. It doesn't cover for all those issues. Yeah? So it's something which maybe the Act needs to look into. How do we a change so that it covers those with disabilities. Coming back to the point you raised on privacy, I do support that view. I must say that I've worked with the election process in my previous work. There was twice, I would say, in which when I was presiding over a station, I had two disabled people. And under the act, you have to have a person representative to bring over the disabled one. And you have to ask the disabled individual who his or her preference was. And there was once, I remember, there was a standoff between the disabled individual and the person who was leading him into the. So that shows where the issue around privacy comes in. And as you mentioned earlier to the voting along party lines, isn't much of a big deal in Solomon. It's more about individualistic favors. So it brings to the question of whether the person who's disabled has the freedom to actually cast his ballot to who he wants, or being persuaded by the person who is actually accompanying him to actually cast the ballot. So it was an issue which I had to intervene and tell him, okay, I think you need to back off. You're here just to witness him going through the process. But I think the issue around privacy, as you rightly mentioned, is something which a lot of disabled individuals have faced in during the casting ballots and the process of coming in. So I think the act itself in the Solomon is designed for the day of the elections, but not to be inclusive for all people with disability, both whether it's visually impaired or physically unable. So I think something which we really need to look into it. And I'm happy that the act is now ratified, so we can start working towards it. But I'm really happy that you're here, being able to share your experience. And it's very rarely that we in the Solomon have females like her standing up promoting issues of disability. So I will give you that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the excellent presentation. I've got two things I think to unpick. Okay, one is about method, and it's more a comment for people in the room. So disability isn't introduced, it's a Western term, right? It's not something that has arisen in the local context. And in most contexts you go, if you ask the question, do you have a disability? People will say no.
Yeah.
If you ask more considered questions like, do you have difficulties in, writing, speaking, more physically moving, you'll get a much higher rate of disability. So I think your presentation is a good reminder to all of us to think more closely about how we ask, about disability. Because once you get more people responding as being disabled, it also helps break down the social stigma. That's just a comment. But what I was interested to find out from you is, we know that Solomon Islands is a very communal society, that we communicate in networks, networks of our tribe and networks of women's groups, for example. Okay, so when the Solomon Islands Electoral Commission and others are doing work to try and get people with disability to come down to the polling station, do they tap into those networks of tribes or those networks of people in one place? Or do they just rely on mass awareness, the usual stuff?
I think in the past, they just rely on awareness, but now that we coming in on advocacy so much, they come to us and like, what shall we do? So that's why I say it's a great step thinking, like people recognize disability and they come to us like seeking our support to support people with disability and do something. But the main thing is we just there, like you just when I was in this room, that it's inclusion, but I don't participate. I was sitting there doing nothing. So that's the gap. But people are coming in trying to find ways to support people with disability. And from the past experience, I've never seen that, and there's a lot of exclusion. And now after the election, it's like more accessible. They see the disability and prioritize them. But the thing is, we need to see how, because they can be independent. I always say that people with disability are differently able. Yeah, because our thought, our expectation is like everybody do things the same way. So if we all use our hands to write, everybody can write on the hands. But if a person with disability doesn't have a hand to write, they have a talent they can use to write. Like some may use their neck, some may use their feet, so they are differently able. Just that we can help them break down the barriers, and they can show us what their ability is. So yeah, thank you.
Do you have a question online? It's in your opinion, how can electoral awareness be carried out more efficiently in the country's geographical context while achieving and improving disability inclusion? about the diversity and the logistical challenges of conducting awareness in Solomon Islands.
Thank you. So, as everybody knows, Solomon Island is very diverse. We have different cultures, we have different languages. I think it is more important, like, we include them. We just don't let them participate. We have to listen to what they say. Yeah. So if you want to go down to any provinces, you have to know their culture. You have to know their way of living. So that is when you will know, okay, this is how I support these people. So for people with disability, I think it is important to involve them and let them participate fully. So whenever you go down to any provinces or any community trying to talk about disability, you have to include people with disability, and they can speak for themselves, and people will understand, like, this is the challenge they face. Not for people with disability alone, but for those languages. So there's different culture. If you involve someone from that particular area, they will definitely show you how things work in that place. They will introduce you to the environment and everything. So I think to do that, it is important to involve those people and let them fully participate, and we can see how we can support these people, either through background or disability or with the diversity. Thank you.
Ellena, thank you so much for coming and for presenting the experience, your own lived experience of trying to incorporate a disability perspective into a very political process like elections. So we really value the time and the effort that you've put in to come here today. Part of my question is about how do we privilege that experience? So one thing that you said during your presentation was about the kind of the report that your organization would have produced during the election. And I think you said it didn't go very far. So I'm wondering, where do you, as the organization, want to send your message to? Where are the groups, who are the groups that need to hear what you and your organization have observed and want to change? Because it's very clear to me that you have some pretty clear ideas of what needs to be changed. So who needs to be influenced and how can that happen?
Thank you. As in the Solomon Islands, a very important group of the fundraiser. Yeah, so when those people say something, everybody lives in them and listens to them. So if a candidate go down to a community, I think the whole community will arrive and they listen to it. So they treat them as their role model. So if I have I voted for that particular member, he's coming down, I will definitely go listen and hear him. So I think the focus is to try and get those people who are very influential to understand it. Because they are influential, they can influence people when they talk about disability. I think so the main idea is people are looking at inclusion, but if they take equity from inclusion, I think things will work out. And for the people to do that is the ones that are very influential, like the government, people who work in this political areas, people who work with different government status or NGOs or whatever to change the policies and everything. So if we influence them, we can influence people down. So because if we talk with people, we go down with them, giving awarenesses and advocacies on the community or the political will change. Because they thought that this is just another information sharing for everybody to. But if you go up there to those influential people, and then they go down to the community, people will like see the importance of people following. So I think that's very important. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, yeah, you again.
And just to add on to your point, I think where the report can be able to be influenced. The question was very important, so you can reach. One of the key issues with the Solomon elections is that not all of our election processes are funded by local. It's about 50-60% funded by donor support. So it would be an option probably to those areas in which we can actually push this agenda so that those who actually support our electoral process can actually take it on board as a condition of their support, that if we have to support the electoral process, these issues around disability should be captured into your process. Because from history, we haven't had an election which we funded by ourselves. It's always 60% or 70% by donor support. So I think bringing her over to Australia is one a good thing. So we can see begin this discussion around disability and elections. Being Australia is also a major donor support in our election process, as well as other partners. I'm just giving some ideas out there.
Definitely.
Probably I just want to ask for the room. Recent report that's been published about the last this election. Has there been any section that captures disability inside? That would be of interest to all of us.
It's like little parts throughout it, yeah. There's not a whole, right, like big section, but there are parts that we do cover it.
To do disability collected data in that report, it's probably not really like Steph saying there is any space of it there, but the data that's been collected itself actually has some data that's gathered about on the topic of disability. But I have to point out that what you said is actually quite true. In that and I will mention that as well when you ask people, in framing the question in a way that do you have disability? People will likely answer it no. And also, but when it comes to the kind of disabilities that are not visible, that's a lot more tricky to question people about or to gather data on that. So I think it really going forward needs a better way of gathering data. But while I'm talking, Ellena, I just would like to say I have been following your work, your advocacy on disability, and I really like what you said about being differently able, and I thought that was a really strong message. And we are talking about excellence in this conversation here, but I'm also thinking about the very basic level of it, that the stigmatization of people who live with disability is a very real thing in Solomons, and we're not talking about it enough. And I'm wondering whether there has been enough work done in just terms of awareness, getting it into the school's curriculum so that we can have the basic level of knowledge, starting from that very level, so that everybody can be aware of how to respond, how to treat people, how to be a little bit more inclusive. I remember my grandmother, he's got toe that's been chopped off because of diabetes, and we don't even call him by his name. After that, we call him by his missing toe. And it's that's a lived reality for a lot of people. So it's, I feel like politics is up there, but very basic level of making sure that we are more inclusive as a community is the most important thing. And I'm wondering whether in the current space of Gen Z, whether there has been work or support coming from donor partners on the issue of disability at all.
I think from where I work, we don't really have Gen Z in the office. We are supported by disability organizations only for that. But those organizations that have Gen Z in their offices, like they just come do awareness. They just train people and they just do awareness and advocacy, but they don't really go into it and really see what's the need of Gen Z. And how it can work for people in different levels. But yeah, they just do awareness and trainings and just to meet the standard of the donors and that. But I think it's important to really see what Gen Z is and how it affects people in different levels. So yeah. But about the data, you can see that there are a few numbers of people with disability. This is why I say you have a little number of small data about disability because people don't recognize people with disability. And so when you ask, do you have disability person? It's a kind of, I think, a simple question for us. So people tend to hide it's a simple thing if you have a disability person in your family because people will talk about you. Oh, this is because this person do something bad and that's why it happened. So it's kind of hard for people tend to hide away child of family member with disability, so it's kind of difficult to find out people with disability get registered and being on a data. So yeah. Okay.
But there are some common ways to ask these questions that have
yeah,
been particularly
yeah.
workshopped in the health sector. So it's an example of where you can learn
Yeah.
from the disciplines about how to ask the question.
So we have the Washington group question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we go down to the rural area, we don't actually use the Washington group. We take that question from the Washington group in a way that people understand what is disability. So we were like, do you have someone who doesn't see very well? And he's like, yeah, I have a child with that. So okay, how do he do things? And then we will answer that question, but we don't read exactly what is on the paper because people will not understand it, and they will like, we don't have any disability patient here, but there's a child with low vision and who see or he cannot understand or see something, but because we ask those questions that is difficult for them, they tend to deny the child. So yeah. Anyone else? Concerns?
Well, we're almost exactly on time. So thank you so much, Ellena. That was fantastic. Really insightful and a lot to think about. We are hoping that this will be the start of a conversation. Like Annie said, there's a lot of data that was collected for the election that we can use for better and more nuanced discussions of disability and social inclusion in elections. Ellena and I will be going to put some words onto paper while she's here as well. So thank you so much. It's a real pleasure having you here. Thanks everyone for coming in person and online. And yeah, let's keep this conversation going. Thank you.